He left Athens standing, 40,000 warriors at his back. The most famous city in the ancient world in front of him. Gates closed, walls manned, the population inside waiting to find out if they were going to survive the next 24 hours. And Alaric turned around. Nobody has ever fully explained why. The sources that mention it at all offer contradictions. A vision of the goddess Athena on the walls, a bribe large enough to make the calculation simple, a strategic decision that a ruined Athens was worth less than a frightened one. What they agree on is the outcome. Athens paid. Athens survived. And Alaric moved south into the Peloponnese, where the cities were richer and the walls were lower and nobody was going to offer him a vision of anything. What happened in the Peloponnese stayed in the sources for centuries. But that is not the story of this episode. The story of this episode is what Alaric was actually trying to accomplish while everyone around him was focused on what he was destroying. Because he was not, in these years, trying to destroy anything. He was trying to force a conversation. He was trying to make the Roman Empire sit across a table from him and give him, in writing with a seal, the thing he had been asking for since before he was king. A title. Just a title. And Rome would spend 6 years pretending not to understand the question. He invaded Greece, sacked the Peloponnese, crossed into Italy, and fought the best Roman general alive to a standstill, twice. And after all of it he went home with nothing. Not because he lost. Because the empire he was fighting had decided that giving him what he wanted was more dangerous than letting him burn everything in sight. This is the episode where you understand why Rome fell. Subscribe, like the video, and let's get into it. Corinth fell first. The city that controlled the isthmus, the narrow land bridge connecting mainland Greece to the Peloponnese, had walls, had a garrison, had every geographical advantage that a defensive position could offer. It also had, as Alaric's scouts would have reported, a garrison that was undermanned, undersupplied, and commanded by officers who were receiving no support from Constantinople. The Eastern Court had a problem. The problem was not Alaric specifically. The problem was that dealing with Alaric required making a decision, and the Eastern Court in 396 was controlled by a eunuch named Eutropius, the chief minister of the teenage emperor Arcadius, who had built his entire career on avoiding decisions that could go wrong. Sending an army after Alaric could go wrong. Negotiating with Alaric could go wrong. The safest option, politically, was to do nothing and hope the problem resolved itself. The problem did not resolve itself. Corinth fell. Argos fell. Sparta, the city whose name was synonymous with military resistance, the city that had never been sacked in its entire history, fell without a significant battle. The Peloponnese, which had been a Roman province for 4 centuries, which had not seen an invader since the wars of the Greek city-states, was burning. The Roman poet Claudian wrote about it afterward with the kind of outrage that only people who were nowhere near the fighting can sustain. He described Alaric's forces moving through the peninsula like a force of nature. Not an army with objectives and supply lines and political demands, but something elemental and inexplicable. Claudian was writing propaganda. But propaganda needs a kernel of truth to work, and the kernel here was real enough. Alaric had moved through the most storied landscape in the ancient world and Rome had not stopped him. Because Rome was busy. The Western Empire had a general. His name was Flavius Stilicho, and he was, by any honest assessment, the most capable military commander Rome had produced in a generation. He was also half Vandal. His father had been a Vandal officer in Roman service, which meant that he understood from the inside exactly what men like Alaric wanted and exactly why Rome kept failing to give it to them. He was the Magister Militum of the West. The title Alaric had been asking for. In 397, Stilicho moved. He crossed into Greece with a Western Roman army, cutting off Alaric's force in the Peloponnese. The trap was well designed. Alaric's army was large, but it was encumbered with plunder and families and the logistical weight of a people on the move rather than a purely military force. Stilicho had the high ground, the supply lines, and the initiative. He had Alaric cornered. And then he let him go. The sources record the fact without explaining it satisfactorily. Alaric's force broke out of the encirclement and moved north, back through Greece, eventually settling in Epirus on the Adriatic coast. Stilicho's army did not pursue with the urgency that a commander who wanted to destroy his enemy would have shown. The Eastern Court accused Stilicho of deliberate collusion. Eutropius, the minister who had spent a year doing nothing while Alaric burned Greece, declared Stilicho a public enemy of the Eastern Empire for letting Alaric escape. The accusation was politically convenient. It was also possibly accurate, because Stilicho had a plan. And the plan required Alaric alive. The Western Empire was facing its own crisis. A general named Gildo had revolted in Africa, cutting off the grain supply that fed Italy. The Western Balkans, Illyricum, were technically under Eastern jurisdiction but practically ungoverned. Stilicho wanted Illyricum. To get it, he needed military force in the region. The most available military force in the region was Alaric's 40,000 Visigoths. Alaric, settled in Epirus, was perfectly positioned to be useful. Stilicho issued him a commission. Not the Magister Militum title, not yet, not officially, but a military command in Illyricum that amounted to the same thing in practical terms. Alaric would govern the region, maintain order, and be available when Stilicho needed him. It was the closest thing to recognition that Alaric had ever received from Rome. It lasted 2 years. The arrangement collapsed because arrangements in the late Roman Empire always collapsed. In 399 Eutropius fell. The minister who had run the Eastern court for years was outmaneuvered by a rival faction, stripped of his position, and eventually executed. His replacement had different priorities. The Eastern court's relationship with Stilicho, already poisoned by the accusations over Greece, deteriorated further. The commission that Stilicho had given Alaric in Illyricum was declared invalid by Constantinople, which still claimed jurisdiction over the region. Alaric was, again, without official status. He had spent 2 years governing a Roman province, maintaining order, training his forces in Roman military doctrine, waiting for the permanent arrangement that Stilicho had implied was coming. And now a bureaucratic reversal in Constantinople had erased it. He sent a demand to the Western court at Milan. The demand was, again, simple. The Magister Militum title. Official command. Recognition. The thing he had been asking for since 395. He wanted it in writing with the imperial seal from the Emperor Honorius himself. Honorius was 17 years old. He kept chickens. His chief interest was his chicken collection, which the sources record with the kind of detail that suggests contemporaries found it as baffling as we do. He was managed entirely by Stilicho, who was also his father-in-law. Stilicho told Alaric he was working on it. Alaric decided to work on it himself. In the winter of 401, Alaric crossed the Alps. This was not supposed to be possible. The Alpine passes in winter were considered impassable for a large military force. The cold, the snow, the logistical impossibility of moving 40,000 people through mountain terrain in January. It was the assumption on which the security of Italy rested. The Alps were Rome's northern wall. Alaric walked through them. He emerged into the Po Valley in northern Italy, and the Western Empire went into a panic that the sources record with unusual vividness. Milan, where the imperial court was located, suddenly found itself within striking distance of a Gothic army. Honorius prepared to flee to Arles in Gaul. His chicken collection was presumably also prepared for evacuation. Stilicho was in Rhaetia, dealing with another Germanic incursion on the Rhine frontier. He moved fast, faster than the situation seemed to allow, pulling forces from the Rhine frontier and marching south into Italy. He was racing to get between Alaric and the emperor. He made it. The two forces met at Pollentia in Piedmont on Easter Sunday, April 6, 402. The date is significant because Gothic Christian warriors considered Easter a sacred truce, a day on which battle was not supposed to happen. Stilicho attacked on Easter Sunday deliberately. It was not an accident of timing. It was a calculation. An enemy that expects a truce is an enemy caught unprepared. The battle was brutal and inconclusive. Stilicho's forces captured Alaric's camp, including his wife and the families of many of his warriors, but Alaric's main force held and the Gothic king himself escaped. By the standards of late Roman warfare, where decisive battlefield victories were rare, Pollentia was a Roman success. By the standards of actually ending the threat, it resolved nothing. Alaric negotiated the release of his family and agreed to withdraw from Italy. He began moving east, back toward Illyricum. Then he turned around. Nobody knows exactly why Alaric reversed course after Pollentia. The sources suggest he felt the terms of the negotiation hadn't been honored, that promises made about his status, his title, the official recognition he had been seeking, had been implied in the withdrawal agreement and then quietly dropped once he was moving in the right direction. If that is what happened, it was not surprising. It was what Rome had been doing to him for 7 years. He turned back west, deeper into Italy, and the pursuit resumed. Stilicho caught him again near Verona. Another engagement, another brutal, inconclusive fight in which the Roman forces performed better tactically but failed to destroy the Gothic army. Alaric again escaped with his main force intact. He again began moving toward the Alpine passes. This time he crossed back into the Balkans. He had been in Italy for a year. He had fought the best Roman general alive twice, to something that wasn't quite a defeat either time. He had come within days of capturing the emperor. He had demonstrated, beyond any reasonable argument, that Italy was not safe as long as he was alive and angry and without a title. And Rome had still not given him the title. Stilicho sent him back to Illyricum with another informal commission. Again not the Magister Militum, again the implication that official recognition was coming, again the promise that the arrangement would be formalized. Alaric accepted. Because what else was he going to do? He could burn Italy. He could raid for another decade. He could spend the rest of his life demonstrating that Rome couldn't stop him. But that wasn't what he wanted. What he wanted was a seat at the table. A piece of paper with a seal on it. The acknowledgement that he was what he had spent his entire life training to be. A Roman general. He went back to Epirus and waited. He was very good at waiting. He had been waiting for a long time. 406 DC. While Alaric waited in Epirus, the Rhine froze. On December 31, 406, a coalition of Germanic tribes, Vandals, Suebi, Alans, crossed the frozen river into Gaul in numbers that made Alaric's 40,000 look like a raiding party. The Rhine frontier, which had held for centuries, collapsed in a single winter night. The Western Empire would never fully recover from that crossing. Stilicho, who had been managing the impossible, holding Italy together, managing Alaric, keeping the frontiers functional with resources that were never sufficient, suddenly had a catastrophe in Gaul that demanded everything he had. He needed help. He knew exactly where to find it. He sent a message to Epirus. Alaric had been waiting 4 years for Rome to give him what he deserved. Now Rome needed something from him. The balance of the conversation was about to shift in a direction that would end 4 years later, with Gothic warriors walking through the gates of the Eternal City. But first there was the question of the money.